Cesium-137, a highly radioactive isotope, plays a critical role in various industrial and medical applications due to its potent radiation properties. However, its dangerous potential was starkly illustrated by a catastrophic event in Brazil in 1987. Known as the Goiânia accident, this incident involved the theft and improper handling of a radiotherapy machine containing cesium-137. What followed was a tragic sequence of events that led to severe contamination and health crises affecting hundreds of people and leaving a lasting impact on radiation safety practices worldwide. This accident serves as a grim reminder of the inherent risks associated with radioactive materials and underscores the necessity for stringent controls and vigilance. Cesium-137 is a byproduct of nuclear fission, commonly used in various fields due to its radioactive properties. It is produced in nuclear reactors and has applications in medical treatments, such as radiotherapy for cancer, and in industrial processes, including the calibration of equipment and density measurement. Cesium-37 emits gamma radiation, which makes it useful for medical and industrial purposes, where precise measurements or treatments are required. In medicine, it is used in brachytherapy, where radioactive sources are placed close to or inside the tumor to target and destroy cancer cells. In industry, cesium-137 is used in gamma radiography to inspect welds and metal structures for integrity, and in agricultural settings to measure soil moisture levels. Despite its useful applications, cesium-137 poses significant health risks due to its high radioactivity. When cesium-137 decays, it emits gamma rays that can penetrate the body and cause severe damage to tissues and organs. Prolonged exposure or high doses can lead to radiation sickness, increased cancer risk, and in extreme cases, death. Because of these risks, cesium-137 and other radioactive materials are subject to strict regulations and handling procedures. Proper storage, security, and disposal protocols are essential to prevent accidents and unauthorized access. The Goiânia accident highlighted the critical need for stringent controls and safety measures to manage radioactive substances and protect public health. The Goiânia accident of 1987 is one of the most severe radiological incidents in history. It unfolded in a series of tragic and preventable events that led to widespread contamination and health crises. The incident, the radiotherapy machine containing cesium-137, was abandoned in a clinic in Goiânia, Brazil. The machine, which was no longer in use, was eventually stolen by scavengers seeking valuable metals. Unaware of the dangers, they broke open the machine and discovered the cesium-137 source inside. The radioactive material was a glowing blue powder, which the thieves initially thought was valuable. They began to sell and distribute this powder, unknowingly exposing themselves and others to high levels of radiation. As the cesium-137 powder changed hands, it spread throughout the community. People began to notice the powder's unusual appearance and glow, but they were unaware of its radioactive nature. Some of the powder was taken to homes, leading to severe contamination of residential areas. Health effects. The first severe cases of radiation sickness emerged within days of the incident. Symptoms include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and bleeding. Acute radiation sickness occurs when individuals are exposed to high levels of radiation in a short period, leading to damage to their bone marrow, gastrointestinal tract, and other organs. Direct contact with cesium-137 caused severe skin burns and injuries. These burns were often painful and required medical treatment. The exposure led to the development of ulcerative lesions and necrosis in affected areas. People who came into contact with the cesium-137 or lived in contaminated areas experienced high radiation doses. This high level of exposure resulted in serious health issues and complications. 4 people died as a direct result of the radiation exposure. These included a young girl and her family members who were among the first to come into contact with the radioactive material. Their deaths were primarily due to acute radiation sickness, which caused severe damage to their bodies. One of the most significant long-term impacts of the Goiânia accident was the increased risk of cancer. Radiation exposure is known to elevate the likelihood of developing various types of cancer, including leukemia, thyroid cancer, and solid tumors. Long-term health monitoring of those exposed has shown a higher incidence of cancer in the affected population. The psychological effects of the accident were severe. Survivors experienced anxiety, depression, and stress related to their health, the stigma of radiation exposure, and the trauma of the event. The psychological impact extended to families and communities, compounding the overall burden of the accident. Some survivors developed chronic health conditions related to radiation exposure. These included chronic fatigue, long-term skin problems, and immune system disorders. The ongoing health monitoring and treatment of these conditions have been a critical part of post-accident care. Beyond the immediate victims, the broader community faced health impacts due to environmental contamination. People living in or near affected areas experienced increased anxiety about their health and the potential long-term effects of radiation exposure. Medical response and treatment. The initial response involved treating acute radiation sickness and managing radiation burns. Specialized medical teams provided care, including supportive treatments such as hydration, pain management, and wound care. Long-term health monitoring and follow-up care were established to track the health of those exposed to radiation. This included regular medical checkups, cancer screenings, and psychological support. Survivors and affected families received support to help them cope with the physical and emotional consequences of the accident. This included rehabilitation services, counseling, and financial assistance for medical care. As soon as the extent of the contamination was realized, Brazilian authorities took immediate action to contain the spread of radioactive materials. Areas affected by cesium-137 were cordoned off to prevent further exposure. Emergency medical teams were deployed to treat individuals showing symptoms of radiation sickness and radiation burns. Hospitals and clinics were prepared to handle the surge in patients requiring urgent care. Decontamination efforts. Teams used radiation detection equipment to identify and map out contaminated areas. This included homes, public spaces, and businesses that had come into contact with the radioactive powder. Contaminated materials, including soil, debris, and personal items, were carefully removed and transported to specialized disposal sites. This process involved careful handling to prevent the spread of contamination. In areas where cesium-137 had contaminated the soil, the top layers of soil were often removed and replaced with clean soil. Contaminated soil was then disposed of in secure waste facilities. The Brazilian government sought assistance from international organizations, including the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, and the United Nations. These organizations provided expertise, resources, and guidance on managing the contamination and decontamination processes. Experts from various countries helped in the cleanup efforts, offering technical support and advice on handling radioactive materials and implementing effective decontamination procedures. Workers involved in the cleanup were provided with protective clothing and equipment to minimize their exposure to radiation. This included radiation suits, gloves, and respiratory protection. Continuous monitoring of radiation levels was conducted to ensure that cleanup operations did not pose additional risk to workers or the public. Safety protocols were strictly followed to protect everyone involved in the process. Authorities provided clear and regular communication to the affected community about the risks, safety measures, and the status of cleanup efforts. This was crucial in maintaining public trust and ensuring that residents followed safety instructions. In addition to physical decontamination, efforts were made to address the psychological impact of the accident. Counseling and support services were offered to affected individuals and their families to help them cope with the trauma and stress of the incident. Long-term monitoring of environmental radiation levels was implemented to ensure that areas previously affected by contamination remained safe. Ongoing checks were conducted to detect any residual contamination and address it promptly. The Goiânia accident led to significant changes in regulations and standards for handling radioactive materials. New measures were introduced to improve security, management, and disposal practices for radioactive substances to prevent similar incidents in the future. The Goiânia accident has become a significant case study in the history of radiological safety. It is frequently referenced in academic research, training programs, and discussions about radiation risks and safety measures. The incident serves as a poignant reminder of the potential dangers associated with radioactive materials and the importance of vigilance and preparedness. The Goiânia accident's legacy is marked by a heightened awareness of radiological safety, improved regulatory frameworks, and a strengthened global approach to managing and mitigating the risks of radioactive materials. The lessons learned continue to shape policies, practices, and responses to radiological emergencies worldwide.